Hello, everyone, and welcome to the first episode of Cricket Conversations. This is a show where I'll be discussing the latest cricket happenings with various guests from all over the world. And my first guest here is Ajinkya. He,
Hi.
hi, Ajinkya. Uh, he goes by the handle Ajinkya VR on Twitter, and he is known for his very minute observations of Test cricket, as well as his complete and utter mastery over the Cricinfo Stats Guru tool, isn't it?
Don't exaggerate.
So, on the agenda today is India's tour of South Africa. So, India will be embarking on their first tour outside the subcontinent against a major team in 3 years. They did tour the West Indies
Right.
in 2016. However, West Indies are obviously not amongst the more fancied sides in Test cricket these days. So,
Hmm.
this is going to be their first real challenge, you'd think, since the tour of Australia in 2014-15. So,
Right.
um, I mean, before we get into the player-by-player specifics, I mean, I was just thinking about the mood in the Indian camp. I mean, I've been following cricket for almost 17 years now, and I've been
Hmm.
on social media for almost a decade. And this is the first time that I'm seeing such an air of anticipation and excitement amongst Indian fans that I've never seen before ahead of an overseas tour. I mean, I think more experienced Indian sides have visited overseas shows over the last decade or so, but there's a feeling that with the South African side in transition and going through their grappling with their own internal issues and all that they are there for the taking. And India is a side on a roll. I mean, having lost only two Test matches in the last 3 years,
Hmm.
and there is an air of invincibility around them, surrounding them right now. So, before we get into the player-by-player specifics, what is your general mood like leading up to the series? Do you think this is their best chance to win a series outside the subcontinent that they've ever had in your time watching cricket? I mean, I know they won in England in 2007 and they won in New Zealand in 2009, but New Zealand were not a big top side in 2009, and England
Right.
also. I mean, it was a largely unexpected win coming off a pretty poor World Cup campaign and all. So
Right.
this
Right.
time around, they're going in with a huge amount of momentum with them, with absolutely not only winning but absolutely manhandling every opposition that has come their way in the last 3 years, with the exception of Australia, which was a slightly competitive series.
Hmm.
So, what is your feeling like leading up to the series?
Certainly, I'd say, uh, I mean, India haven't ever won a series in South Africa and Australia as well. So, I mean, keeping that in context, I'd say, since South Africa are a side in transition, De Villiers hasn't been playing Test cricket for a while. Amla hasn't been in the greatest of, form. I know he got 200s against Bangladesh recently, but he's been one of their main players, hasn't really, lived up to those standards. Dale Steyn has been out of the side for a while now. So it seems that, and on the other hand, India as a side, they've been dominating everyone, admittedly at home, but, that helps, settle the side down and, now they've got a pretty settled batting and, I believe our fast bowlers as a unit are one of the better units, we've seen in recent years. Zahir Khan obviously used to be, brilliant, quite brilliant. But uh, as a whole, Umesh Yadav and Mohammad Shami and Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, if they can keep fit and bowl well, I believe they are a very, very good fast bowling unit. Yeah. So on the whole, yes, I would be very hopeful and a series lost here would be considered a disappointment. So yes, I think this is a really good chance.
Strong words there.
Hmm.
I suppose there's always a flip side to it. I mean, India have been dominating at home for the last 3 years. They've absolutely brushed aside oppositions, every opposition.
Right.
But there's always that school of thought that having dominated in their comfort zone for so long, and
Hmm.
given the vast diverse in conditions that they've played in for the last 3 years, compared to what they're likely to encounter in South Africa, and
Right.
especially with them not playing any warm-up matches and having very little preparation time. So,
Hmm.
do you think that could be their undoing?
Uh, it does happen sometimes, but then the first test again is at Cape Town, which traditionally, I mean, yeah, it's not been the best venue for India over there, but I believe it's better than starting at some place like, Durban, which is, often throws out just a green lawn for a pitch. So keeping that in mind, yeah, I would say certainly some preparation would have been good, and we haven't really played on these kinds of tracks for a couple of years now. Uh, but these days players are used to playing in conditions all over the world. They keep playing ODI series in countries overseas, even if they haven't played tests, which is not the same, obviously. But it's not like none of them have ever, known what South Africa is like. And all of them did pretty well on the last tour, I'd say. Uh, Virat Kohli and Cheteshwar Pujara, Murli Vijay, Ajinkya Rahane, all of them got some really good runs over there on the last tour. And I wouldn't say I wouldn't expect them to get caught unprepared really. So I believe it's just a matter of, getting through the first couple of sessions where if you're batting and, getting into the test match and not just, not losing a couple of early wickets on the very first day of a series. So yeah, if you go from there and take it session by session, I believe it will be a pretty good series for us.
Fair enough. Yeah. So now let's discuss the Indian squad that was
Hmm.
announced, I think, a fortnight ago. So
Right.
the only talking point coming from that squad was, I mean, it was a largely unexpected squad, and even this sort of talking point that I'm talking about is was largely expected. But there is a section of Indian fans who feel that Kuldeep Yadav, with his mystery Chinaman left arm spin, could have been useful
Hmm.
over there, whereas Ashwin and Jadeja, they've largely struggled on their previous tours, overseas tours, and they've obviously done really well at home, but over the last 3 years. But do you have you noticed any noticeable improvements in their bowling that is going to fetch them rewards overseas, or do you think it's just a question of maybe boosting your stats playing at home, and or do you think they're now well equipped to uh, make the transition and do well in unfamiliar conditions?
I certainly think that Ashwin, while he hasn't yet, given enough confidence while bowling on, flat pitches, but I would say he has come some way ahead as a bowler in the last few years. I think he has, improved his stock ball, which is the off spinner, concentrates less on the variations and, you know, more on hammering out a good, consistent line and length now. Does bowl a bit short sometimes, gets square cut some every now and then, but I believe he has, improved. And since the last series in South Africa, I believe he went, wicketless in Johannesburg. He has really improved as a bowler, I would say, in 4 years. And I remember Johannesburg was, a, quite a flat track later in the match. It eased out. Both teams got 400 plus in their respective second innings. Wouldn't read too much into a single match. And as for Jadeja, he played the last. He played on the last tour of South Africa, just one test match, where Ashwin was dropped, I believe, and he played at Durban, Jadeja, and he got a 6 for there. He did have to give away a few runs for it. I think he did give away over 100 runs, but uh, he did get a 6 for, and that was in the first innings. So I certainly believe he's capable of getting wickets in South Africa. If you can get a 6 for as a finger spinner in the first innings of a Test match in Durban, yeah, I think yeah, you can do pretty well there. And certainly he as well has improved, and he's always been extremely accurate, gives great control. Uh, if he can get some support from the other end, I believe, yeah, Jadeja would, yeah, be a real threat if the conditions suit him even slightly.
Kuldeep Yadav was India's, I think, probably the trump card in the test win against Dharamshala. I still haven't forgiven him for that, by the way.
Hmm.
But
Yeah.
that is a pitch that is probably the closest pitch in India that you're likely to going to get in South Africa. So,
Hmm.
uh, I mean, with this being a three-test series and with Ashwin and Jadeja having failed in the past overseas, I know Jadeja had a good test in South Africa.
Hmm.
After that, he
Hmm.
had a pretty disappointing tour of New Zealand and then England.
Right, right, right.
So, I mean, there are question marks over their abilities in unfamiliar conditions. So, with this being a three-test series, and would it have been a worthwhile gamble to have Kuldeep Yadav in the squad? Maybe not to start the series, but if India need a result in the third test, and if both the spinners have failed in the first two test matches, then maybe just to have an extra man in the squad as a potential wild card option?
Actually, Kuldeep Yadav, uh, really impressive couple of test matches. He's shown he can, even though he's a wrist spinner, he's shown he can maintain good control and, a wrist spinner is always helpful in conditions where the ball doesn't, start going off the rough from the second or third day onwards. So yeah, I believe at least him being in the squad could have been, a better option, I guess, maybe, in place of, I don't know, Jasprit Bumrah or someone like that. But as for immediately throwing him in at the deep end, uh, I think that's a no. Maybe if India managed to do well in the first couple of tests, he could have been an option for Johannesburg, I believe. But the squad is what it is now, so
Yeah.
I believe we can just yeah
Nail on the
go
head
ahead with
there.
yeah.
Nail on the head. Squad is
Hmm.
what it
Yeah,
is, and so we'll now discuss the actual squad. So
right.
yeah, so the selectors have made their call. So it is Ashwin or Jadeja. So who's going to be our pick for the first test?
First test at Cape Town does help spinners sometimes later in the match, but if it was up to me, at least based on their respective performance in the last two to South Africa, although they both played different test matches, I'd go with Jadeja certainly. He offers more control, and in those conditions, I believe the major role you'd expect from a finger spinner is to hold up one end and not give away too much while the fast bowlers attack from the other. Uh, Ashwin does take his wickets at a faster rate than Jadeja, but if sometimes he tends to lose control, and if somebody really goes after him, somebody like Amla, De Villiers, all brilliant plays of spin bowling. Uh, I would I would certainly pick Jadeja for the first test in Cape Town, seeing the control he provides. Yes.
That's how I would go as well because I think
Mhm.
one interesting stat about Ashwin's home season, I think he picked up something like 80 wickets in the
Right.
2016-17 season.
Hmm.
But his record when India bowled first, there's when he didn't have scoreboard pressure to play with was 38. So and whereas Jadeja's average in the same matches was 25. So that is a stark difference on how they bowl when the conditions are not assisting spin. So Jadeja definitely over Ashwin for me as well.
Right. Yeah.
Moving on then, the other major talking point in the squad, not in the squad, but in the starting 11, is the choice of the openers. The India have been playing musical chairs with the openers for I think ever since KL Rahul made his debut.
Right.
I don't think they've ever played one particular opening combination throughout an entire series. They've always chopped and
Hmm.
changed. Even Abhinav Mukund has had his chances in between when two of these three guys have been injured. So
Right.
I don't know. I mean, who is currently at the top of the pecking order? KL Rahul seemed to have cemented his spot as the number one opener after his stellar performances against Australia on some really difficult pitches against a quality bowling attack. He was the
Hmm.
leading run scorer for India, I believe, in that series.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
uh, after that, the tour of Sri Lanka came. Murli Vijay got injured. Shikhar Dhawan came in and
Hmm.
scored big hundreds. KL Rahul also did well in the series in the sense that he scored runs, but he didn't quite get the big hundreds. And
Right.
then they stuck with the same duo for the first test against Sri Lanka. Both of them had a very similar at
Hmm.
home. That is, both of them had a very similar test. Both of them failed in the first innings when the ball was doing a lot actually at Eden
Right.
Gardens.
Yeah. At Eden Gardens. Yeah. Yeah.
Doing a lot. And in the second innings, both of them got a 50 each. So, but Dhawan scored like 15 more runs. He's got a 90 odd, whereas KL Rahul got a 70 odd. So and then KL Rahul played the second test with Murli Vijay because Dhawan had to miss due to some family commitments. And
Hmm.
KL Rahul failed in that test match. And for the
Right.
third test, now suddenly KL Rahul, from being the number one opener and having scored something like 7 or 8 half centuries in a row, not in a
Hmm.
test match, but in 7 or 8
Yeah.
innings in a row, suddenly
Right.
finds himself out of the team. Not even as the number one opener, but not even as the number two opener. He's completely out of the team, and it seems that they're going to go in with Vijay and Dhawan at the top at Cape Town. So Ravi Shastri is a big fan of Shikhar Dhawan. He's been on board comparing him with AB de Villiers in the past. So what is your take on the situation?
I would say that's certainly quite an exaggeration. I would say to compare him with De Villiers. I have tremendous respect for Dhawan's abilities. He has shown he can take matches away from the opposition in the space of a session. But he has tended to, do those sorts of things more where the conditions are, not as tough for batting, or I would say at least there's you can play through the line, go for your shots, and Dhawan has tended to do really well in those conditions. But for a tour of South Africa, first of all, I would say there is no question in my mind who the number one opener for India is, and that is Murli Vijay. Uh, he has given consistent, solid starts to India everywhere he's played, be it India, in Australia, in England. He's gotten hundreds almost everywhere he's played. He got a 90 or a 97 something in South Africa the last time he
97.
played. Yeah, 97, yeah. So there's no question in my mind that Murli Vijay should be the number one opener. And he's got great technique, leaves the ball well, has played Steyn and Morkel and everybody before. So yeah. And as for the second opener, I would go with Rahul. Uh, Failing in a couple of test matches, or not even failing, maybe scoring a little less runs than is expected would. Uh, that's really not the way to go about selection, I believe. He's shown that he can score runs on difficult wickets. Got 100 on his debut tour of Australia. That was in Sydney, I believe. Uh, and that was an excellent pace attack. There was Harris and Mitchell Johnson, and so I would certainly say that Lokesh Rahul should be considered ahead of Dhawan. The one slight, factor which might push one towards Dhawan is that Dale Steyn is returning, so he tends to do brilliantly well against right-handers, does well against left-handers, but certainly is a much better bowler against right-handers. So I don't know if that should be a factor in the selection, but for the first test at least, I would stick with Vijay and Rahul.
That's an interesting point you make about Dale Steyn against left-handers. But with
Hmm.
regards to Shikhar Dhawan, I think Dale Steyn was completely on top of Shikhar Dhawan on that last tour. And South Africa also have Vernon Philander and Morne Morkel in their side, who I believe
Right.
are both far superior bowlers to left-handers than
Hmm.
right-handers. So I don't
Right.
think that should be a consideration. The one thing that Dhawan has going for him is obviously his superior conversion rate. He's known to get big hundreds when he gets in. But
Right.
I think getting in South Africa is a lot tougher than it seems because
Right. Yeah.
I was just going through the stats
Hmm.
on Cricinfo, and India have had a
Hmm.
grand total of 13 Test centuries scored in South Africa over the last 25 years, and
Right.
five of those have come with the blade of the great Sachin Tendulkar. Other than
Yeah.
that, you've
Right.
had I think Rahul Dravid, Virat Kohli, Cheteshwar Pujara, Kapil Dev, Praveen Ambre, Wasim Jafar, and Virendra Sehwag. These are the guys who scored the hundreds, and
Right.
one thing to note is that only two of them are openers. Virendra Sehwag scored his 100 as a middle order batsman on debut. So there have
Right.
only
Yeah.
been two hundreds by openers in South Africa. That is Wasim Jafar and Praveen Amri. So that just shows
Right.
you how difficult it is to get hundreds for a subcontinental opener in conditions like South Africa. India have still done well with the bat in places like Australia, even to a lesser extent in England. But South
England. Yeah.
Africa has always been a place where Indian batsmen have struggled. So I mean, picking someone just because he scores big hundreds against ordinary attacks like Sri Lanka over someone who has shown over a consistent period of time that you can rely upon him to see off the new ball and get consistent 50s and 60s and 70s. I think that I'm not too sure. I, mean, I think they're just being too greedy with Shikhar Dhawan. They probably think that if he gets going, he could take the game away from the opposition. But I'm not convinced that Shikhar Dhawan has the technical prowess to actually survive the onslaught from the likes of Steyn, Philander, Mokel, and
Uh
Rabada.
huh.
So
Uh huh.
this is a decision that I'm not particularly convinced with. So yeah,
Right. Yeah. And I agree with you that yeah. I don't know if this is just my impression, but uh, Dhawan tends to stay put with his feet and play outside the off stump a lot. Sometimes gets inside edges onto his stumps, and not really the sort of opening batsman you would prefer to see out the first session on a tour of South Africa. And big hundreds is one thing, but as a test match purist, you would really want some opening batsman who could, it doesn't matter if they don't average 50, I guess, but they should be able to see out the new ball and have a great judgment of their off stump, and keep taking the shine of the new ball and not expose number three and number four to the new ball consistently. That's really what you want in those conditions, and I think Lokesh Rahul and Vijay can do an excellent job of that. Yeah.
absolutely, absolutely. So then the other probably spot of contention is
Hmm.
the middle order fight for potentially two spots. So maybe it might be just one spot. I mean, there are question marks over Ajinkya Rahane's form. He was probably India's most consistent batsman throughout their previous overseas cycle. He did well in all four countries. I mean, even Virat
Right,
Kohli had his failures in England. Murali Vijay
right.
failed in New Zealand, but Ajinkya Rahane was the one constant who's got runs pretty much everywhere. But at home he seems to have struggled. I mean, he got got a couple of hundreds against South Africa at Delhi, and other than that, he's largely struggled at home. He played a very crucial innings against Australia in the second innings at Bangalore. But
Hmm.
overall, if you look at his record, ever since India moved to the subcontinent, it is nothing to write home about. And especially since starting from the tour of the series against England at home last year, he seems to have struggled particularly. Other than that 50 against Australia at Bangalore and 100 that he
Right.
scored in Sri Lanka, I believe he hasn't even crossed 50 in any other innings. And
Hmm.
the series against Sri Lanka at home was where he absolutely hit rock bottom. He
Right.
couldn't cross, I think, double digits in only one innings. I think he crossed
Yeah,
double digits.
barely got 10 or something.
Barely
Yeah,
got
yeah,
10
yeah,
in that last
yeah,
innings. He averaged, I think, something like two or three.
yeah.
So that's a that's a easy uh, really poor form right now. So
Right.
he also struggled in the Ranji Trophy in a couple of matches that he
Hmm.
played for Mumbai before the start of the Sri Lanka series, I believe. And quite bafflingly, he was picked in the ODI squad and he was made to carry the drinks instead of playing
Uh-huh.
the Ranji Trophy quarterfinal for Mumbai. So that is a completely baffling decision on the BCCI's part. So
Right. And I believe there's recognition of that fact from the team management and the selectors. Correct me if I'm wrong, but was he pushed up to number three on the last innings of the last series we played
uh,
against Sri Lanka?
yeah, he
Yeah,
was
yeah.
at three just to enable him to find form, but not to any avail.
Yeah, certainly. So there has been recognition of that fact, but I mean, at least on this front, I'd like to, congratulate the selectors because there's, sometimes uh, media pressure or, pressure from fans or whatever it is that if a player doesn't do well for a couple of matches or maybe a series, there's a tendency to drop him, even if he's done brilliantly in the past. So I've always been of the belief that you should keep your belief in quality players. He's proven that he can score runs in difficult conditions, and it's just a question of maybe a couple of good innings there, finding his touch again, and so even if he hasn't done well, I think he's earned his the long group selectors have given him, and shouldn't be too long before he starts finding form. I would still give him a couple more test matches or series to get back into touch. And South Africa is a place he's done well. Got 96 and a 51, I believe, on the last tour. And that was at Durban in a match we lost, and Dale Steyn picked up 9 wickets. So he batted well with the tail in that one, I believe, showed that he can uh, attack and score runs when when the batsmen at the other end are running out and he's running out of partners. Certainly, I would say has deserved a chance to uh, be on this tour and bat at his regular spot at number five, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I think you could probably argue that his failures at home are probably down to his maybe weaknesses against spin bowling because I think he averages only 32 against spinners in the subcontinent.
Yeah,
So maybe in more pace
right,
oriented conditions where
right.
he's done well in the past, that might just be what he needs to get
Hmm.
back into form. But obviously,
Right,
South Africa is a completely different kettle of fish. He's done well in the past, but for an out of form player to go there and face the music straight away might be a little difficult. But as you say, he definitely has some credit left in the bank. So I think he should play at least the first couple of test matches. So assuming
right.
Rahane plays, so who do you play between Rohit Sharma and Hardik Pandya? Rohit Sharma got his opportunity against Sri Lanka, scored 100 and a couple of 50s in the three innings that he played, and then obviously scored his third ODI double 100. So
Right.
he's a man in a rich vein of form right now.
Hmm.
And before that, I mean, before the series against Sri Lanka, the last series that he played was actually against New Zealand, where he got
Right,
some runs. He got three 50s in three tests, I believe, and
right.
including a 50 on a very tough surface, on a seam-friendly surface at Eden Gardens, which was a very good
Hmm.
half century in the second innings of that test when India were in a little bit of trouble. So after that, he got injured and missed the series against England and Australia. He made the squad for the tour of Sri Lanka, but couldn't play because India played five bowlers in all the three matches. So
Right, right.
you could say that Rohit Sharma is someone who has been accused in the past of not quite grabbing his opportunities that have come his way. But that is definitely something that you can't level against him right now because he's done really well in his last couple of series. He's in great form, so this might be his chance to shine. But on the other hand, you've got Hardik Pandya, who was rested from the Test series against Sri Lanka at home
Right.
because they wanted to protect him and his body and wanted to reduce his workload or something like that
Hmm.
for the tour of South Africa. So having rested a player specifically with an eye on the South Africa tour and not giving an opportunity to boost his stats or whatever you call it against a weaker opposition, would it be fair that he gets dropped after not even getting an opportunity against Sri Lanka just because someone else has done well, or would you say that Rohit Sharma is just a better option than Hardik Pandya in those conditions, so you just go ahead with him in any case? How do you go about it?
Uh, yeah, when it comes to picking test sides, I've usually been a believer in the idea that you should pick specialist players for the spots instead of, and Hardik Pandya may go on to prove that, he as a bowler and a batsman, he might turn out to be a genuine test all-rounder. But those kinds of players are, really, really rare. Once a decade, you find somebody who, warrants selection with both bat and ball. And looking at our bowling attack, I believe it's a good one. So, and certainly I don't think Hardik Pandya's batting, although he has shown some flashes of brilliance, it doesn't warrant selection over what Rohit Sharma has shown over the last couple of years, and particularly over the last few couple of series. Rohit Sharma is somebody who's been maligned by fans and unfairly in my view because I believe he's quite an exceptional batsman. He's comfortable against pace, lovely player of the back foot, extremely comfortable against the short ball, hooks and pulls well, great timing, and maybe he just doesn't, maybe you'd expect somebody like that to have a test average of, 60 and 55, and then you go up and look at his record, you say, okay, he's got only 300s, but I don't really think that's, the way you should be looking at him. He has a good record as it is, and he has shown that he has the technique to handle excellent fast bowling in the past. Uh, so yeah, I definitely go with Rohit Sharma over Hardik Pandya, definitely.
Okay, so you mentioned about the Indian pace attack earlier on the show, and you
Right.
said that while they don't have the experience of Zahir Khan, this attack probably has better depth to it. They have got four or five really good bowlers, whereas in the past
Yep.
they've largely been dependent on one or two guys. So,
Right.
I mean, if you look at the bowling attack as a whole, and I'm not talking about the reserve players, but at the end of the day, only four bowlers are going to play in a test match. So I think we should just
Right.
compare the main four who are going to play with some of the past attacks. So in 2006, they had Zahir Khan, Sri Sant, I think VRV Singh, who was
Uh-huh.
supposed to be the fastest bowler in India at that time, and Anil Kumble. And in 2010-11, when they drew that series, uh, they had Zahir Khan, Sri Sant, Ishant Sharma, and Harbhajan Singh as the bowlers.
Emergency.
They,
Yeah.
they did pretty well. The bowlers did pretty well on both those tours. Won their first test ever in South Africa at Johannesburg in 2006,
Hmm.
and drew the series in 2010-11. Could have even won the series had it not been for an extraordinary 100 from Jack Callis batting on
Right.
one leg and one with one hand. So they've done well. Indian bowlers have done well in South Africa in recent times. So how does this attack compare to those attacks?
Well, man for man, I would say certainly that Zahir Khan, in my view, is the best fast bowler India have produced since probably Kapil Dev and certainly since Srinath. But him apart, I think this new attack uh, has excellent depth to it. Bhuvaneshwar Kumar, lovely control of the ball, can swing the new ball too well, and he's increased his pace in recent years. Umesh Yadav can reverse the ball. Great stamina, excellent bowler to keep going at you over after over and spell after spell. Maintains the space for long periods. Bowls a very heavy ball. Uh, you know, really a workhorse kind of bowler who can also get you those wickets through sheer pace when there's nothing happening. And Shami, of course, I believe. if everybody's fit, Shami should be the first guy to be picked as a fast bowler in the Indian team. Again, brisk pace. He has shown he has lovely control of reverse swing. Uh, Certainly, I would say in terms of depth, compared to the fast bowling attacks of the past, this one is certainly better because Zaheer Khan apart, you had Sreesanth and Ishant Sharma. Sreesanth, while capable of bowling absolutely brilliant spells once in a series or twice in a series, hasn't always afforded his captains the control you need from a test bowler. Has tended to go for runs. Ishant Sharma has uh, you know, never really looked to be too threatening at the test level. Has got some wickets here and there, and he has played. It's amazing to think now he is 70 odd test matches now. But Ishan Sharma hasn't always, been the kind of bowler who, even if he doesn't get wickets, will hammer out a consistent line and length. Has always, tended to drift onto leg stump, not a couple of times every over, and compared to that, yeah. So the depth in the current attack is certainly quite in another league, I would say, to what we had on the six or even the 2010 or 11 tours of South Africa. Yeah,
That's the pace attack, but when you consider the spinners, I mean, they had Anil Kumble in 2006, they had
right.
Harbhajan Singh, who bowled really well in those two test matches at Durban and Cape Town in
Hmm.
2010-11. And now you have Ashwin and Jadeja, who are still largely unproven in these conditions. So when you factor that in, and when you look at the first choice four-man attack, I'm not talking about the
Right.
squad backups. Do you think this attack is better?
Uh, yeah. It's always tough when you're compared to guys like Kumble and Harbhajan, 600 and 400 test wickets and awesome records really. But yeah, I mean Kumble was, I mean, an exceptional bowler. Can't really, not really fair to expect the everybody to live up to those standards. At the same time, I believe uh, Jadeja has shown certainly that he has the control to keep batsmen quiet at one end, and certainly he picks up a lot of wickets when there's something slightly in his favor as well. Ashwin, while not as consistent, has quite a brilliant, strike rate. Not so much due to his performances overseas, but he does, tend to go on a roll and suddenly pick up wickets in bags. Uh, Compared to the previous attacks, I would say I would reserve my opinion on how they'll do on this tour. I believe they have the capability to do well, but I really wouldn't want to comment on if they would do better than Kumble and Harbhajan, who they've just been outstanding performers. Uh, so compared to that, I would reserve my opinion with a sense of optimism that yeah, our spinners and the four-man test attack as a whole has been one of the better and certainly in terms of depth, one of the better attacks we've taken to South Africa.
Yeah, I suppose the biggest difference this time around, more so than the quality of the bowling attack, is probably the quality of the opposition. South Africa are nowhere near the imposing force that they were in 2006 or 2010-11. This is a side in transition.
Right.
They were hammered quite badly in England by what
Hmm.
is still a fairly average England side, you could say.
Right.
They're losing currently in Australia. So, I mean, there are question marks over the hosts as well. And there's obviously that window of opportunity for India to exploit, especially with the first test being at Cape Town, as you said. So
Hmm.
yeah, so moving on to the South African side, then we are probably running out short of time, so we won't be able to analyze them in detail. But a few talking points: AB de Villiers returning to Test
Right.
cricket after a 2-year hiatus. Dale Steyn
Hmm.
uh, making his comeback. I mean, one thing about Dale Steyn is that he's made several comebacks over the last 18 months or so, but I think
Right.
he's somehow gone injured uh, midway through a test match in three of his last four test matches. That is, I think
Right.
against
Yes.
India at Mohali in the first test of the series, against
Hmm.
then he made a comeback next month against in the home series against England, and he got
Right.
injured on the very first day at Durban and missed the
Right.
rest of the series. And then in Australia uh, at Perth in the first Test match.
Right.
Once again, he went missing, got injured in the first innings itself. So far, Dale Steyn hasn't even shown the fitness to last even one innings, let alone an entire Test match in recent times. The only
Hmm.
completed Test match that he has played over the last couple of years was the Test against New Zealand at Centurion, where he bowled quite
Right.
well. And
Hmm.
the other test against New Zealand, which was the first test at Durban, was a washout, so you probably couldn't
Right.
gauge his fitness from that. So
Right.
he's played five test matches, out of which he's been injured in three of them over the last couple of years. So there are question marks over his fitness as well. Hashim Amla, not quite in the greatest of form, as you rightly pointed out earlier on the show. So I mean, these are the three pillars of the South African side, on whom they've built their dynasty over the last 10 years, along with the likes of Graham Smith and Jack Callis, obviously. So
Right.
how do you see these three guys shaping up in this series?
Uh, Very difficult to say how, De Villiers is going to do, but uh, as his past record shows, if he's fit and available, he would probably walk into almost any test team in the world. Uh, and he plays, excellent player of all kinds of bowling. Again, there's no way you to really judge how he's going to do until you've seen him bat. Uh, as for Amla, not done so well over the past couple of years, but he did get 200s in the recent series against Bangladesh. So possibly that has helped him uh, get back his touch. And again, a great player, great batsman, I would say. One of the best of the past decade and past 15 years. Has scored runs everywhere against all kinds of bowling, and has tended to really enjoy batting against Indian bowlers. So uh, I think I would be hopeful of Amla doing well in this series. And as for Dale Steyn, uh, in my opinion, yeah, he's probably one of the greatest strike bowlers Test cricket has ever seen. Fitness provided, it's only a matter of time before he starts picking up wickets. He did play the tour match against Zimbabwe Test side recently. Didn't pick up a wicket, but by all reports, he got through a few overs. I think bowled about 12 or 15 overs, something like that, and showed no signs of injuries or injury niggles, and bowled at a fair pace. So fitness looks hopeful, but his past record hasn't been great in terms of fitness over the past couple of years. Uh, if he's fit, there's no question in my mind that he's going to, start picking up wickets like he always does. Yeah. So there's that.
So yeah, so I guess we've covered most of the topics. So we'll just move on to some of the questions that we've received on Twitter for the series.
Mhm.
So the first question is from Mark Jesby, who's asking, what must India do to be successful, and how important will the choice of the spinner be for India? Should they pick Ashwin's batting over Jadeja's ability to hold an end? And does Rohit Sharma deserve a place in the middle order after feasting on the Sri Lankan buffet? So I think we've covered this second and third question. So I'll throw the first question at you. What must India
Mhm.
do to be successful? What is going to be the key to their success?
Well, quite simply, I mean, in Test cricket, what I've always believed the most important ingredient to be a successful Test side is to have bowlers who can bowl to a set field. Uh, you can get your Wasim Akrams and your Shane Warnes who can do magical stuff with the ball, but if you have four bowlers who can hammer out consistent lines and lengths, bowl to a set field, and not give away free hits. If the batsman hits you for a good shot, then yeah, well done to him, and you keep bowling. But leg stump half volleys, stuff like that. If India can avoid that, and I believe this attack has shown that they can. India, yeah, really should. I think I'm really hopeful of them doing well on this tour.
Okay.
And as for the batting, I think all of the batsmen have shown that they can perform in foreign conditions. All of them have got runs, so I'm not too worried about the batting as such. Yeah.
Okay. The next question is from Faraz Makhani, who's
Mhm.
asking whether the Proteas should go in with four pacers and Maharaj or three pacers and Maharaj, and in which case, which pacer sits out and why. So I'll take that one.
Right.
So I think, Keshav, this is an interesting bit of dilemma for the South African selectors, because Keshav Maharaj has actually been their leading wicket taker in tests this year, and he's
Hmm.
not played a single test in the subcontinent. All his test
Right.
matches have been in South Africa, New Zealand, and England, in conditions that have had absolutely nothing for the spinners. I mean, even in England, there have been pitches in the past where Yashir Shah did well in 2016 and a couple of spinner-friendly
Uh-huh.
pitches, but this time around the pitches were all very green and had absolutely nothing
Right.
left for the spinners. So Keshav Maharaj's performance in Test matches this year has been quite simply outstanding, considering the
Right.
conditions that he's played under, and with the team not quite being in the greatest of form. I think he's done a commendable job. But against a side like India, who plays spin bowling really well, and they just dominated the great Rangana Herat recently at home. So, I mean, Keshav Maharaj obviously deserves a place to play based on sheer performance, but uh, if you have all four quicks, that is Stain, Philander, Mokel, and Rabada fit and firing, then there's always that temptation against subcontinental sides, especially against a side like India, to go in with all four of them and bombard them with pace and bounce. So it's a tricky call. I mean, dropping Keshav Maharaj would be a really, really harsh call. But if I were to be a selector, I think it probably depends on the conditions. As you said, the first test is at Cape Town, so that is a surface where you probably need a spinner. If the first test was at Johannesburg, then I would have said pick four pacers, no doubt. I mean, or even at Centurion. But at Cape Town, I'm not too sure. So we'll have to see how the pitch is like. It'll be interesting to see what kind of pitches South Africa prepare. Whether they are in full revenge mode, dishing out green steamers to avenge the dust bowls that were laid out for them in 2015, or whether they're going to prepare normal sporting wickets like you usually get in South Africa. So the pitches will obviously dictate the team combination, and there's always the
Right.
question mark over the fitness of South African bowlers. I mean, Dale Steyn, as we all know, Vernon Philander also isn't the fittest around, and even Mone Mokel has had his issues in recent times. So there's always the possibility that injury might just force their hand and might make the choice of the selectors a hell of a lot easier. But if all four are fit and available, then I would certainly be tempted to play all four of them. And if at all you need a spinner, then maybe there is always that option of playing five bowlers. Vernon Philander is a capable batsman. Potentially, he could bat at number 7. Keshav Maharaj can also bat a bit. He could probably bat at 8, and Rabada at 9, Stain at 10, Mokel 11, maybe. So it will have to depend on the pitch, I guess. I mean, if it's a green
Right.
seamer, then
Yeah.
you probably leave out Maharaj and just go in with the four seamers and seven proper batsmen.
And unless it's a real turner, I believe South Africa might have a couple of guys who can, hold one end up with spin bowling, with part-time spin bowling. Not really what you want in a test match, but
They've
if
got Dean
it's not
Elgar.
a real turner.
Yeah, they've got
Yeah,
Dean
Dean
Elgar.
Elgar can do that job. Yeah, yeah. So it's not really, a question of, real turning tracks. So I believe, yeah, they might just choose to go with four paces in one of the test matches. I don't know.
Yeah. So Rituraj is asking, did India miss a trick by not picking Kuldeep? I guess we have already covered that.
Yep,
Uh,
yeah.
Rahul is asking, who do you think are going to hold the key to India's chances in their batting and bowling lineups respectively, and why? So I'll let you take that one.
Okay, as far as the batting goes, well, obviously, I would say Virat Kohli has shown that he's not only the best batsman in India, but probably along with Steve Smith, one of the top two or top three batsmen in the world right now. And he's scored a mountain of runs over the past couple of years. Just had, I guess, a couple of failures in the home series against Australia and away against England, but that was a while back against England at least. So certainly Virat Kohli is somebody who can get a lot of runs and get them really quickly in most conditions. Extremely dangerous batsman, exactly the kind of guy you want to be batting for you at four. If he finds good batting conditions and if there's a platform, he's going to just, grind you to dust. And that's exactly what you want from a three or four batsman. So I think he's going to be the important wicket for South Africa. And for the bowling, I would say I don't really have a guy who's going to be the X factor sort of to in the Indian bowling lineup. I think pretty balanced bowling lineup, and all of them have shown pretty good performances in Test cricket over the past few years. I think you'll need to look at the bowling in another way that needs to not be a weak link in the bowling, and that's where I think the choice of the spinner comes in. Uh, you want your spinner to hold up one end and not let somebody like Amla and De Villiers to get away with easy runs. If the track is not helping spin too much. So I'd say the choice of the spinner might prove to be important. Uh, and yeah, there you have it. So thanks.
I would actually like to differ on that one. Obviously, Virat
Yeah.
Kohli is by far India's best batsman, and he's obviously going to hold the key to scoring most of their runs. But I think
Hmm.
if I would ask specifically about what is actually the going to potentially make a difference for India, I would say it's the opening combination, because
Opening combination. Yeah.
whenever India have done well overseas, they've had at least one opener, if not both, doing well.
Hmm.
I mean, even if you look at the last overseas tours, you had Murli Vijay doing well in South Africa, you had Shikhar Dhawan doing well in New Zealand, you had Murli Vijay doing well in Australia, and Murli Vijay
Right.
also did well in the first couple of Test matches in England. And
Hmm.
when the moment both the openers started to fail in the latter half of the England series,
Right.
India
Right. Right.
completely fell apart at Old Trafford and over losing inside 3 days. And I don't think they lasted even 90 overs across both the innings. So whenever Indian openers have failed, both the openers have failed, they've completely fallen apart. So I think it is crucial for India that at least one of the openers, if not getting big scores, he should at least play out deliveries, see off the new ball, and make things easier for the likes of Virat Kohli and co. And which is why I also believe Cheteshwar Pujara at number three is also having a crucial role to play, because with Shikhar Dhawan as an opener, I'm not particularly convinced that he's has the tools to survive too long against the likes of Steyn and co in those
Right.
conditions. So maybe Cheteshwar Pujara at number three could also have to do a fair bit of what do you say, the donkey's work, you could say, probably seeing off the new ball and then also cashing in, because Pujara is a batsman who has the ability to convert his starts into big scores. He's got a 150 odd in South Africa. So I would say Murli Vijay
Right.
and Cheteshwar Pujara, these are the two players who hold the key to their fortunes, more so than Virat Kohli. Virat Kohli will also obviously score the runs, but I think he probably would prefer if these two guys lay a good platform for him.
A platform. Yeah, yeah, I guess, yeah, that's certainly a fair answer.
So
Yeah.
yeah, last question for the day. Manoj is asking how will both the teams line up. So I think the answer is pretty obvious. In India's case, it's going to be Vijay. Dhawan is going to be the second opener. Pujara, Kohli, Rahane. The choice is between Hardik Pandya and Rohit Sharma. So that's a bit of a talking point. Radhiman Saha as the wicket keeper. Spinner is again slightly contentious issue. I think they'll probably go in with Jadeja just based on his recent form. Ashwin didn't have a great series against Sri Lanka, especially the last test at Delhi. So I
Hmm.
guess that might just sway the selectors in Jadeja's favor. And then the three seamers, Bhuvneshwar Kumar, Shami, and I think Ishant Sharma is probably just snaked in ahead of Umesh Yadav in the pecking order. So
Right.
I think the major talking point is Rohit Sharma and Hardik Pandya. For South Africa, I think it will be Dean Elgar and Aidan Macrum. If I'm not sure if I'm pronouncing his name right, but those would be
Hmm.
the openers. Hashim Amla at number three. I'm not too sure about the batting order because Ipe de Villiers, when he last played Test cricket against England in 2005, 2015, I beg your pardon, he batted at number four before that
Right.
hiatus that he had. So maybe he could return to batting at number four because JP Domini played in the last series against England and he is retired.
Hmm.
And so maybe that could just be a like for like swap batting at number four. Faf du Plessis generally prefer to bat at number five, so
Right.
ever since he assumed the captaincy, so he might just prefer to stay there. So Amla three, De Villiers four, du Plessis five, Temba Bavuma has been a revelation for South Africa.
Right.
Is number six. Quentin de Kock, obviously world class wicketkeeper batsman, number seven. And the pace attacker, bowling attackers, we have already discussed it. I think I would personally go in with four pacers, ideally, or if not, maybe I think if one of the pacers has to miss out, then I think, despite the fact that he was the leading wicket taker in England and by far the best bowler, I think Morne Morkel is probably the one who's most vulnerable. Should they choose to go in with only three seamers? So yeah,
Yeah, I agree with you that if they go with three seamers, I think Marnie Markle is the guy who sits up here.
yeah. So that's a wrap from us. Thank you for joining, Ajinkya. Great
Thank you
talking to
for
you.
having me here. Yeah.
Yeah. So I'll be back next week with a new guest, potentially on a new topic. And until then, keep watching cricket because there's some really, really exciting Test cricket lined up. And hope to have your company again soon, Ajinkya. Thank you.
Yep. Wonderful being on here. Yeah. Thanks. Thanks.
Cheers.
Cheers.